Pastor Younggun is gone, and Tom is a little desperate. We've spent all of this time, these past couple of years, building this division, and people are picking sides, and we'll go talk to Pastor Younggun. He's your pastor. And Tom has kind of made this problem for himself, but now that Younggun is gone, he has a large group of people in the church that aren't really viewing him as their pastor, as their leader. And he needs to fix that problem. So what does Tom do? And it's interesting to me how what he does depends on who you are.
It's true.
Faith can feel like hearts and butterflies until someone lights a match and burns it all to the ground. Welcome to the Burning Butterflies podcast.
The sad thing is that there's abuse of every kind within the church. But the spiritual abuse is the stuff that just
Well, it's a place there shouldn't be abuse. Like, there just shouldn't be abuse in a place that claims to.
Well, it ruins your soul. If you're new here, we suggest listening to our prologue episode first.
This is the story of two women's journey through toxic church culture and spiritual abuse, all while finding healing in the end.
Sometimes it's just the facts, and if you get offended by it, that's a you issue. And if we can't be mature enough to have these conversations, even if some of the topics are difficult, then shame on us.
We are going to look at everything that kind of went down in the spring of 2019. Because man, oh man, did we did a lot. Like, I didn't realize all of this happened in the same hunk of time.
Right, in such a short period of time.
Yeah.
Like, it is interesting to see because we've sat and flushed it out and been like, no, I mean, like, there's receipts that this stuff happened at this time. And you feel like it's so much time and like it was years and it was like a long time, and you don't realize that you're just being inundated over and over and over again with like the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And you're like, and I mean, for a purpose, like,
Yeah.
keep your head spinning.
Yeah. So we've talked about the tactics of high control organizations, of cults and all of that stuff. We've talked about those control tactics that they exploit and put on people. And, you know, one of the things, just to kind of remind everyone, is they control your time. There's this closed system logic that you should get everything you need from within this church, from within the walls of Come As You Are. We have everything that you need. We've love bombed the crap out of you. And even if you felt like Pastor Younggun was your pastor and he's gone, like, you're still a part of this elite inside group. And so we need to really get you into a place where we can implement that double bind thinking of, it's kind of like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And really, this is what Tom employs against people at this time. And some people he's a little more forceful and rough with it, and some people he's much, much more manipulative and almost like double talk with them. But it all is this idea that, you know, he needs to control your time, and we need to give everyone in the church something to do within the walls of the church. We are all here for this big, huge purpose. He's still pushing that, you know, the church is going to grow and double in size and we need to be ready. And now it's this push that, well, it hasn't happened yet because we're not doing enough. we need to be doing more. And very few people are going out into the community to do, but in the church, we're just doing.
Well, and you know what, though? That's something that, like, before we dive into the timeline, that is something that has been, like, circling in my mind for the last couple of weeks, is this, like, especially since we've been talking about bylaws and, you know, board of directors and the real truth of churches as business. Because, you know, everybody, I feel like I, particularly in people that I knew in church circles, were like, well, yeah, we understand that the church is a business, but you have this level of trust that you trust that it's operating as a church who has to, well, we have to comply in America with, you know, we all know we got to follow our tax laws and this, that, and the other. And so you brush it off, like with a naive trustiness where you're just like, yeah, well, it's kind of a catch-22. You know, the church has to operate as something. It has to operate as a business. But, like, all of that you just said, I was like, oh my goodness, this is what I've been thinking for, like, the last 2 weeks, is, like, number one, like, this is going to be just my disclaimer from, like, this point forward in life, is like, have you seen your church's bylaws? Not only have you seen them, have you read them? And who is the board of directors? And what is the business practices of the church that you belong to? And then, but what I've been thinking, now that I'm past my disclaimer, is what do churches do? Like, I am sure, 100% sure, that there are churches out there that are making a difference in the world. I mean, I'm going to imagine that's probably a thing. I will allot for that. But other than being a place where you buy in with a membership and you pay your membership dues monthly to run the building and the people that work at the building so that they can serve you, and then you can also serve in it. I just don't see where, like, it's just a country club.
Yeah. And that's the thing,
like,
is,
I don't know. Like, am I wrong? Am I missing something? Because I just feel like, and especially come as you are, like, so many people went and so many people gave so much money to do things for the people that go and pay the money. Like, it's a self, give me the word, like a cycling through itself. There is no going out.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is I want to remind people of what we said when we first started this podcast. You're going to hear what we're talking about and you're going to think, oh, well, not my church and not all churches. Okay. But it's enough that we have a systemic problem. And like, I've been to other churches and, like, they do things, don't get me wrong, but who's doing those things? The people who are paying membership dues into the churches, but the church isn't doing it. The church isn't funding it. The members who already pay a membership fee to be a part of a feel-good club are then funding through their businesses or just through good ideas, like, things out in the community. Like, I've seen churches go and do things out in the community. Yeah. But also, what are you doing for the community? If you're going and you're serving at a soup kitchen once a month, or you're, doing a big summer park event once a year, or whatever your big quote unquote community outreach, to use, the lingo, is that really making a difference? Because if you went away, isn't there just 15 other places that would step in your place to serve at that soup kitchen? If you went away, would the whole community collapse if there wasn't a big summer park event? And
right,
so,
because you're not housing the homeless.
Yeah, are you truly,
you're not feeding the hungry in your church? I mean, you have a food pantry, and I just really, I'm not angry, but I'm ready to start putting churches on blast. Like, I feel like churches need to be audited for their business practices, and people need to wake up and be like, what are we really doing?
Yeah.
You know, like,
Because-
what is this business organization that I'm giving a ton of money to?
And your time.
And your time to be a member of so I can feel good? But I'm not actually doing anything that's actually measurably good.
Yeah. And that's the thing is if your church were to go away, would that community feel the impact?
Right.
And the
I guarantee you that if Come As You Are went away, the community would not feel any impact.
No.
At all.
No.
At all.
And so if you're only impacting the lives of the people who, like you said, are paying their way, are you really making a community impact? And so everything we're going to talk about today are things that Tom started really pushing. And it's important that you have this in your forethought as we go through this episode, that Tom was desperate to get more people on his side. Young Gun is gone, and he needed people to respect his authority. There are some of us who proved ourselves during this division time, and we showed that we are willing to follow Tom blindly, but there's other people who are asking questions. And so he can approach some of them with authoritarianism, but most of them he approaches with this, oh, well, this is who I've been all along, and I just was stepping back and letting Young Gun, he was so young, and I was just letting him, spread his wings, and then look what God did. God called him to somewhere bigger. And God will call you to somewhere bigger too. God has big plans for your life. He has a plan and a purpose for your life. And all you have to do is say yes to him, because we can do nothing apart from Christ. We can only do what we see our Father doing. And so if you just say yes to Christ and then subtly slip in, which means say yes to Tom, in a very manipulative way. If you say yes to Christ and you do what God is asking you to do, he called Young Gun into the mission field. He might call you to do big things. But if you're not saying yes to him in the small things, like tithing, like serving in your church, then how is he going to call you to bigger things? Why did Tom need people to tithe and to serve? Well, we answer that question over on our Patreon. So I invite you to go over there where we kind of go in depth of what we have discovered as we've kind of dug through financial things about Come As You Are and everything. So you can learn more about that there. So he has personal financial investment in having this church have a lot of people who give. But also, you need to give people a sense of purpose, and they're not going to be all in for you because there's 1,000,004 things out there. This is the time frame where Tom starts really ragging on, oh, you give money to like Compassion International to a kid. That's great. You can still do that, but that doesn't count as your tithing. That's extra. Like, you do that out of extra. That's not your tithing. There are so many parachurch organizations out there that do amazing things, but God is never going to use your money to help them change the world if you're not willing to give him your money in your home church.
Right. You got to give to the local church first. Your tithe is for the local church. And then your offerings. Well, that's everything above that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to think this is the time frame when tithes and offerings, those two words became very synonymous and used a lot.
Yes. This is the time where we really started to kind of brainstorm. We didn't implement anything at this time, but we were really brainstorming different ways to make giving more appealing without saying the words, you have to give. Because Tom was always very careful. And he always, I don't need your money. This church doesn't need your money. He would say it from the pulpit almost on a weekly basis.
Yeah, and tell you a story about how he was one of those people who, if he went to church and they mentioned money, he thought all they wanted was his money. Like, he would say that all the time.
Yep.
And I think that I didn't think that, but him saying it, like, was me thinking, like, you know what I mean? Like, I never went into a church and was like, all they're after. I never had that thought.
Yeah.
And I'd never heard that but he would say it all the time. He'd be like, I used to go to church. If they mention that's all they want, I used to think all they want, here it comes. They just want my money. But we're not like that here.
Yeah. But we give you the opportunity to give. And God loves a cheerful giver. Like, the double talk was insane around tithes and offerings. But we start doing things that do require people to donate extra money towards. One of those things is we have this phenomenal ministry surrounding theater, even though Tom isn't willing to accept the fact that his son kind of effed it up and fumbled the ball.
Yeah, and the whole thing like fell apart. But we have stuff.
Yes, and we have to keep it.
Some theater flats that these men worked really hard, which they did. They did a great job, like building portable theater flats out of wood.
Yes. So we need to keep the theater flats. We are on a mission to make the next big summer park event bigger and better than ever. And so we need somewhere to store all of the stuff, because we did have, when they were building the theater flats, they did go through and they repaired a bunch of the games and stuff that we had for the big summer park event. And so now that they're all repaired and everything, we really need a place to keep all of those. And like we've said, we built this huge building with zero forethought of storage. And
it's like my house.
So we have
been the same builder. Just kidding.
We've spent 10 years, just shoving things into corners. Well, now it's becoming a problem. And so we need more storage. So we decide, first we were going to buy storage sheds. And then Tom realized how much a storage shed cost. And he was so angry that Tuesday when because he had called Home Depot and Lowe's and somewhere else. But he had called all these places to get quotes for storage sheds. And he was so angry because, at my previous house, we put a shed in the back and we were able to do that for a few $100s. I don't understand why we're talking about thousands of dollars. Well, because Grandpa Boomer, the economy has changed. And, that was 20 years ago you put a shed in your backyard. Things cost more now. So, yes, it is going to be more money. And so he was so angry. So he called some old men from the church. He called them in and they had a closed door meeting. It got rather heated because there was one man in particular that never backed away from telling Tom that he was wrong when it came to like building stuff. And he loudly let Tom know that
he was wrong.
It is going to cost more than because Tom was like, surely we could build these for a couple $100 a piece. Well, no, because we can't just build it on the rocks or on the dirt and use it as storage. We're going to have moisture issues. We're going to have rodent issues. And so we need to pour concrete slabs. We need to build out framing. We need, there's steps you have to take in order to do this the correct way. And so they argued and argued about it. So finally it was, we're going to build these sheds and the people of the church, we're going to push this and people can donate to help build the sheds. And I made the inserts for the bulletin, and it was, we broke it down. If you give, this much money, you're buying a sheet of drywall. And if you're giving this much money, you're buying, this many 2x4s.
Plywood and a 2x4,
Yeah. It was so stupid. But people gave to it. People
did.
Because
we had to build sheds.
We had to build sheds. And
to shove big pieces. They could have built the sheds out of the flats, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But anyway.
But yeah, so we had to do that, and we had big plans. I think the original plan is we were going to put 6 sheds back there because we were supposed to have the theater ministry, the big summer park event, the Easter egg hunt was supposed to get their own shed. We were going to have a shed full of just like tools and supplies. So then it would keep the garage more clean.
Yeah. Since they had they given half of the garage at this point
to the youth,
right? So then the garage had gotten smaller. Yeah, I thought so. And it's really funny because right after the Christmas play, like, sentimentally, like, I didn't want to see any of it get taken apart, and we were doing this theater ministry, and then, but after Valentine's Day, like, it was done, and I was like, throw the darn things away. But then they built a shed for them, and I'm like, okay, if you'd asked me a couple months ago, I would have been like, yes, I was on board for keeping them, but
yeah, well, and
at the time they were building sheds, I was like, we're never going to use them again.
You have all these ministries that need to use storage space within the building. Well, that makes Tom upset because we are now encroaching on storage space where he had a bunch of stuff because we can't throw anything away. So any old electronic equipment that we had that we no longer use, we're not throwing it away. We have to store it. And so all of these ministries are encroaching on his worship team, storage. Yeah. So his solution was, well, we'll just build each ministry their own shed. So children's ministry can have their own shed and they can put whatever they want back there. Youth can have their own shed. They can put whatever they want back there. Women's ministry. So we were going to have like 6 sheds, right?
Yeah.
The town, because now we have a new city planner.
Yeah.
And the town was like, you're not doing that.
You can have 3.
You can have 3. You cannot have 6.
Yeah.
And so that made Tom really mad. And for a whole Tuesday, he ranted and raved about that. So we built these sheds. And I will say the guys from the church stepped up. They built them. They included like the youth kids. Like my son went and helped build. Like he learned a lot about construction stuff. Like, so I will say that they did that. But, again, that's why do we need, I'm not negating that it was a good thing, but I am bringing up the fact that my oldest son got to participate in that, but my middle son, they have entire classes for that in high school. Like currently my high school son is building sheds that the high school sells to people in town. The high school construction kids build these sheds, learn all the principles of construction, and then sell the sheds.
Get in on that.
to people in the community.
I need a shed? No, I don't need a shed. I'm just kidding. Sorry.
But I'm like, why do we need to, again, do something that someone else is already doing and make it just within our 4 walls?
Yeah.
And so we do that. We start this project where these women want to go and they want to cut hair for the needy. But we're not going to go and like give homeless people haircuts because they're gross. Like we're not going to go do that. So we'll go and like, old folks' homes or, families who can't afford to have their kid have like a nice haircut for like back to school or things like that. We'll do these little events. But but then we always have to put our come as you are spin on it.
Well, hold
You have
on.
to have someone there to share the gospel. And for some reason, you needed to come and eat soup
Right. So
and get your haircut.
But also, like, I could be, maybe I'm wrong. You tell me, because if I'm like trying to go back into what I remember, it's like we're going to offer free haircuts. We're going to offer some food. We're going to offer the gospel, but we're going to promote it within our own church. And then we're going to say, and if you know anybody, bring them.
Yes.
And this goes back to what I was talking about. How is that? Because like you said, it's like they're like, okay, well, let's go out and like go to where the homeless live in like 2 towns over and set up shop and offer haircuts. Like there's places you can go do that. And it's like, no, we want to help the people that are here with us. Like it's all a come to us. We're not going anywhere. You come to us. And if you get the word through word of mouth, because we're only giving the information to the people who sit here on a Sunday. And if they want to invite somebody, they can. So
yeah. And we can't promote within the schools because we're saying we want to do these for these families. We can't put a flyer in there for stuff because you've named the ministry something with Jesus's name in it.
Yeah.
And so then that opens a whole nother can of worms. So then Tom is convinced that the public school system is, suppressing the word of Christ and they're suppressing the gospel. And this really Tom has always had a beef with the public school system because according to him, that's why Froggy did drugs. Yeah.
Wasn't your spectacular parenting?
Yeah. Like never mind parenting or genetics or anything like
lack
that.
Of
like
getting your child any help in their life.
Yeah. It was those damn public school teachers, I tell you. But Tom
Which is so funny because he didn't start doing drugs until he was like out of high school. So
yeah,
I'll tell you.
Yeah. And so Tom has this kind of like problem with this public school system. And so this really just starts to amp it up. And so anything we were doing in terms of youth activities or anything like that, like all of that ends. And we are no longer working with the district. We are no longer, we used to really promote the big summer park event with flyers that went home with every kid in the district and all of this stuff. And we are done with the district because they refuse to let them put flyers in there. And honestly, and I don't even know if that was the reason the district gave. And I find it a little funny because our school board at that time had a pastor on it. And
I think this is because we're in 2019, right?
Yeah.
And so our school district had really gone through an administration change.
Yeah, we had
this time.
Yeah, we had a new.
This is right when it just started. This is when the good old boys club that used to run our school district really got dismantled and shooken up.
Yeah.
And then right after this is when we got like the out-of-towner superintendent. This is when this all starts because this is when I started homeschooling.
Yeah.
And it did stem from, I had one kid graduate in 2019 and that senior year was like a fight with the schools about like just all kinds of stuff. And then that new superintendent came in and made some rulings about like different clubs that were going on in the high school, like kids who qualified for things that they had worked for since they were freshmen. All of a sudden, weeks before they graduated, found out they weren't going to qualify for certain things that they were supposed to get like academic credit for and stuff like that. Like it was a mess. That's what was going on right now. So I can see where because, like you said, we had a new city planner, and now we have some out-of-towner mentality type people coming into this small community and shaking up the school district. It was a lot going on in 2019.
There was. And Tom took it as a personal attack against him. This is where...
Which, like, so absurd. Like, we believed this crap. Like, honestly, believed, like, how much in the community this church was and how intertwined and involved. And I'm sorry, this church hadn't done anything for the community since, like, 2 years after it was formed. And from what I can gather from this podcast, honestly.
Well, and
because we just believed it. We just believed, we're out in the community. I never went out in the community.
No. And if we did, we were going door to door with freaking pies and gospel tracts and inviting him to a play. No, like, and that's the thing is, like, there are other churches in the community. We had our school board president was a pastor of a church. We had another pastor that served on the school board. We've had pastors that serve on, like, town council and things like that. If you want to make a difference in your community, you go and you serve your community.
Yeah.
You don't say, hey, if you need a haircut, come and eat our crock pot of soup in frickin' May and get a haircut, and then have Charlotte's mom with her sandwich board tell you about how you're going to burn in hell if you don't accept Jesus.
Yeah, that's how we're serving the community. That's it right there. Doing great things.
Yes.
Keep it up, George. Doing great things.
We do have people who really do try and make an effort. And one of those people are the Griswolds. We've kind of introduced them this chapter. But, you know, Clark Griswold is feeling the call on his life to he feels like God is calling him to be a pastor. And so he approaches Tom and is like, hey, I feel this calling on my life. Like, I really think, like, you know, God could do something with me. And they've been serving at Come As You Are. They've been doing a lot of stuff, right? And this is the point where they're having a lot of closed door meetings. And we're going to get into this in, like, a little bit farther down the road episode, more about this story. But just this is the point in time where, you know, the Griswolds and Tom are having these meetings. And so Clark Griswold is put in charge of, he gets to lead a master life group, which is, you know, Tom handpicks. If you lead a group, you have to be picked. And very few newcomers, quote unquote, new people get to lead these groups. It's mostly the OG, Come As You Are people who lead a master life group. And so Clark gets to do that. He comes in on Wednesdays. So on Wednesdays in the office, Tom leads a Bible study group. Young Gun was doing it, and the Griswolds were attending. And so now Young Gun is gone. Tom's kind of taken over, but now Clark Griswold is like, hey, I can, you know, I'd like to try. Like, can I lead a couple of these Bible studies? He's stepping up, getting involved in youth and things like that. And people are liking it because he is very just kind of like, he's funny and he's very down to earth. But he's also like, he wears a shirt that says world's greatest farter. And then it, like, farter is crossed out. And then it says, oops, father. He's funny, just real world things like that. But that is not Tom's vibe whatsoever. And so he's not the only one. You have a handful of other people who are really trying and really, like, listening to what Tom is saying and being like, yeah, we do need to serve more. We need to be doing more. Like, what is God asking me to do? And I really think Tom felt like he would preach these sermons about you can do nothing apart from Jesus. We can only do what we see our Father doing. And everyone would start coming back to him and being like, okay, Tom, what does God want us to do? And instead, people were like, okay, God, what do you want me to do? And Tom was like, well, crap. They're not asking me. They're asking God.
And now they have all these ideas.
Yeah.
All on their own.
This could potentially be a problem. We do a women's retreat during this time also. Were you a part of Project Change?
No, I did
No.
not go to this one. This was the year, because this is 2019. This is the year that my coworker took off that weekend to go see tulips in Denmark.
Oh.
And I couldn't
Fancy.
take off the retreat. I'm like, I have taken this weekend off since I worked here. And you booked a trip to Denmark on my weekend? Like, this was my what? Yeah. So I did not go to this retreat. I didn't participate in this retreat. Nothing. Absolutely nothing to do with this retreat.
Brandi, keep in mind, Brandi and I are still like not allowed to be friends right now. And in the planning of this retreat, where, we're still talking, we're still hanging out in secret and things like that. And the only thing I really remember about this retreat is a woman wanted to be a part of like the shirts and bags and everything. And she wanted these like ugly silver tote bags.
Yeah.
Like
they were ugly.
It looked like made out of tinfoil.
And mind you, the colors for this were like black and orange.
Yeah.
Right? And silver.
They were like the salmon color. Like
or
that
salmon.
Was yeah. So. Like it was like Brandi's curtains in her dining room.
Yeah. It was salmon colored.
Yes, so black and salmon, and then they had
like a big silver sunburst on it. Like
yes.
Yeah. She wanted these silver bags.
Yes, and Brandi was super pissed off about the silver bags. And then I had to help and part of this was, my punishment. I'm on timeout. I've been put in the sound booth, but we still have to do things to keep me in line, to help me know that I'm still in trouble. And so one of these things is I have to sit with Charlotte's mom, and I am not joking you, for like 2 weeks straight, for like 3 hours a day, for 2 weeks straight, to build her slideshow for women's retreat.
Yeah.
So prior to her living in the same town as us, they lived down in southern Colorado. And Charlotte's mom has always spoken at retreat every single year. She says the same stuff every year. I can tell you the handful of funny anecdotal stories
right now.
She's going to tell. She chooses a different Bible story to apply it to every year, but she tells the same stories.
Yeah.
So she would handwrite her notes and fax them to us. So an old lady with a pencil, not even like a marker, Sharpie, even a nice dark pen to fax it to us with a pencil, would handwrite her notes and then fax them to us. And we would have to decipher her notes. And then Charlotte would sit on the phone with her mom and be like, what did you say here? And she'd be like, well, I don't know. I faxed it to you. And and so like they move here. And so we were all like, finally, we don't have to deal with the faxing. No, someone has to sit with her mom. And that year, Amanda was in trouble. So Amanda had to sit with Charlotte's mom. And this woman did not want, and like, because we would just make her slides and then she would show up at retreat and her slides would be made and she couldn't really say anything about it because they were made, right? This is the first time she had creative liberty with her slides. And we would be like, I want a picture of Jesus. sitting at the foot of the cross. So, you do a search. Pictures of Jesus sitting at the foot of the cross. Yes, but those flowers are purple, and I really would like, like white daisies
I'm not
surrounding him.
changing the flowers. And
Okay, well, girl, this is 2019. We do not have AI generated images where you can put in specifics like that and it'll just
pick one of these pictures in its entirety. You don't get to take this head off of Jesus and put it on this body next to this cross with these flowers. Okay, it doesn't work that way.
I told her no. She complained to Charlotte. So guess who had to sit there and Photoshop all of these images to make it exactly what was in her mind.
Yeah.
2 weeks of my life was spent doing that.
Yeah.
I did help another woman. We can kind of talk about this over on our Patreon a little bit, but I did help another woman that I love this lady. I love her to death. And I feel so bad that she was not able to live her true, authentic life, and felt, because she's amazing. She is an awesome person, just who she is as a person. And we treated her like shit. We really did.
Yeah, because Christians are the most tolerant people you'll ever meet.
Yes. So,
no.
We can kind of go into that over more on our Patreon. But I did enjoy helping her.
Yes.
And I did. I even enjoyed like what she was going to talk about. I was like, I would love to sit in a session and hear about that. Like, she did a great job.
I feel like Tom and Charlotte always had to juggle we need people to do stuff. And then they would get the people they had to choose from who could do the stuff. And I don't feel like they were always like, they're like, oh, okay, these are our choices. So,
well, because Charlotte would always be like, who would like to speak at retreat? So, Melissa can't. She's at work. Amanda's not going to retreat anymore. And we're never going to give her a microphone ever again.
Right.
And
you got Charlotte's mom. Beth Moore's gone.
Her daughter's there, but do we really want her? We don't know what her daughter's going to say. How much influence has Beth Moore had on her daughter? And so who are we left with?
Yeah. So now we have to train people up. It's just interesting to sit back and think about like how so selective they were over who got to do stuff, and like just to really sit back and look at it and be like, and how long they would, like when you talk about Griswold, like, yeah, he wasn't Tom's cup of tea, but out of the pool of people that were willing to do it, he was, it's almost like the best of the worst. And I'm not saying anything against him, but like even this lady, like I'm looking at it from Tom and Charlotte's perspective. They're like, we don't like any of our choices, but I guess you'll do.
Well,
until you rock the boat.
Yeah. Griswold has to jump through all of these hoops. And like I said, we're going to get more into like his specific, because Tom did that man dirty.
Oh yeah.
But so he's having to jump through all these hoops to prove himself. But Charlotte's pet just got married. Like right before Beth Moore leaves, Charlotte's pet gets married in the church. Beth Moore is like in charge of the building, right? And everything. So she goes in there, and we are a dry building. There is no smoking, no drinking, no drugs on our property, right? There is champagne everywhere. There are champagne glasses broken in the little kid, like the Jack and Jill bathroom by the preschool Sunday school room. And there's champagne glasses broken in there. And Beth Moore approaches Charlotte's pet over this and is like, hey, you knew better. Like, what the heck is going on? You can't have alcohol in here. And she's like, oh no, that's not what that was. Okay, well, it's clearly champagne. Like, it's not, you can't, it's not like it was just in a glass and you could pass it off as sparkling grape juice. The bottles were there. Like, And it wasn't just like there was like some liquor bottles and little shooters and all of this stuff. But yet, who got to talk at that retreat?
Oh, yeah.
Charlotte's pet.
Yeah.
Because we can overlook the indiscretions of certain people.
Yeah.
And other people have to fight and claw just to have themselves considered.
Yeah. And it's all about who's okay with slinging the Kool-Aid.
Yeah. And so because we have this kind of like, who do we have left? One of those things is youth group.
Yeah.
Who is going to be in charge of youth group? Because Young Gun was doing it. Well, Young Gun is gone now. So Charlotte takes over youth group. And that was part of the like caveat of me and Brandi being put on timeout is Charlotte also took over children's ministry. And she starts implementing all sorts of changes. Kids stop going to youth group because it's boring. Old ladies are there. And then children's ministry, we have to, change a whole bunch of stuff around. And, it's almost like working in a school district. It's like when the district comes in and they're like, you should do this, like on your PD days and be like, okay, when was the last time you were actually in a classroom with students? Oh, well, I taught for 10 years and then I got my job in the district in 1992. Okay, that's great. What are you like? Kids didn't have cell phones or anything like that. Like, how are you going to teach us what to do in the classroom when we have an entirely different breed of kids? It was kind of like that. Charlotte hadn't done anything in children's ministry since the first 2 years Come As You Are was open. Then she never did children's ministry again. And she ran children's ministry like a 1980s Baptist children's ministry.
Yeah.
And here we are trying to be a non-denominational children's ministry. And it was not meshing. The teachers were frustrated. Brandi was trying to like appease Charlotte, but also like keep her teachers happy because keep in mind, like if you sign on to be a classroom teacher, there's no like I'm serving once a month. You are that classroom teacher for that entire year. You are signing on and you are saying, I will teach this classroom for a full year.
Yeah.
With no Sundays off. That was a huge ask we were asking of people. And I remember being such an asshole about it too. And being like, well, it's not that hard.
Yeah.
Like, I can't believe I treated people that way. But
we're not asking you for life.
Yeah, we're just asking you for an entire year, no days off. You have to prep everything. You have to plan your lesson. Oh, and by the way, FYI, you have to be the one to provide a snack for these children out of your own pocket. Any crafts or anything like that you want to do, you have to buy all the supplies out of your own pocket. If you can't show up 30 minutes before service starts, we're going to come and chew your ass about it.
Right.
But Jesus loves you, and thank you so much for serving the Lord. We're making a difference in these children's lives.
I have so many opinions. Once again, I thought I was talking in the beginning of this episode, like so off topic, and now here we are. We've come full circle. Like, seriously, what are you paying your membership dues for? To keep the lights on so you can come and sing some songs and listen to some man talk for an hour, and then you have to pay for everything else? Like, read the bylaws. Read them. Figure out who your board is. Make better decisions. Like,
yep.
Oh my gosh. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we were all about it. Like, it hurts my brain to stop sometimes and think about, like, go back and be like, why did we buy into this? Like, we just, like, the difference of what I thought then and what I think now, like, it's like once you see it, you can't unsee it. But it's like
Mhm.
we bought into it. We thought this is how you did church. Like we thought this was all biblical and ordained by God, and not just some, Club Med. I don't even know. I'm going to come up with a name. I keep putting them out there. One of them's going to stick, and I'm going to have a name. But it's like, for what? To pay some pastor's salary who doesn't do anything? Like, I don't know. And then you see posts. This is like so outside of this like the timeline, but you see posts on social media of like Christians who post things. I saw a good one the other day. It said, if your pastor is marrying like two men in the church or something like that, or marrying two women, or like gay people or whatever, right? I don't remember how it was worded, so I don't want to be offensive, but it said then he's not a pastor. And I'm like, well, if you're a pastor, I have a whole long list of things that I could say that if your pastor does,
Yeah.
half of the things that Tom, the pastor of Come As You Are, does, guess what? He's not a pastor. Who cares if he marries gay people? How about he shouldn't be financially benefiting? And oh my gosh, and the list goes on. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Are you like
covering up his abusive son, financially benefiting, demeaning people, like making
a liar,
people,
like lying, like you're a flat out liar.
Yeah,
you're a liar. You yell at me like, oh my gosh, like the list, and I'm like, how about let's start there? Let's start with,
yeah. I think that's a good thing to also continue over on our Patreon. Is
let's talk about it.
Yeah. Is there anything during this time in your house that you want to?
Well, this is when I was homeschooling. Like, this is when I started. I started homeschooling 2019, the school year. So I had been at this point homeschooling since, I guess I'd say, like, probably August of 2018. So spring of 2019. Yeah, we're in our first year of homeschooling. The last two kids. And, I can't say that I did it out of some, like there's a whole homeschool movement within a lot of these non-denominational evangelical churches. There's a huge movement to homeschool.
Mm-hmm.
I did not homeschool from a fundamentalist, like, religious type motivation.
Yeah,
I did
save my children from the heathens.
Yeah, it wasn't so much that. It definitely had to do with the educational system, and like I said, our school system was going through a lot of stuff. So there were like, I had a lot of things going on. One, I believe in alternative education, like just flat out, whatever that alternative education. If your children are being serviced well within the public school system, then by all means go for it, right? But if that school system does not have the means or the ability to provide the services that you need for your child to learn, and they just can't make that happen, then don't be shy or scared to go find alternative education. Whether that's through, my kids have been to private school, my kids have been to public school, we've homeschooled. And I've made different choices for different years for some of my kids too. It was whatever they needed in that moment, and we were going to get that education from the best possible means for us. So I would say that is like my big blanket statement, but also with the things and the abuses that were going on in my home, well, schools are mandatory reporters. So,
yep.
And I had some pesky neighbors, and I can't fault them or blame them, because I have to believe that they were doing the best possible that they could do. But it was during this time that Like I had gotten a phone call. I was at work one night and I got a phone call that had happened before. I have gotten phone calls while I was at work because of things going on in my home because I left my children with a psychopath. So, sorry, arrest me. I begged and pleaded for their forgiveness already. But my daughter called and the neighbors wouldn't let my daughter go home because she was scared. Like it was this big, huge thing. It had blown up and they were going to call the cops or they had called them because I don't know. It was a big mess. And then I was like, well, you need to now you're holding my children hostage. There's nothing going on. Like everything's fine. I don't know what your people's problem is. Get your nose out of our business. Right. So then, and of course the neighbors thought, as they should have. Okay, as they should have. They did what they should have done. But yeah, so this is the kind of stuff that's going on. Different events like this, and so of course, and then my daughter was having behaviors at school and things, and so. The last thing I want for any of my kids, and the last thing I think any parent should ever want, is for their child to be labeled as a behavior issue within a school district, because you never lose that label, and then you're stuck in the behavior system, and that's not you don't want to be there. And I had already been through, like I said, with my oldest daughter had I don't know. I'd gone rounds with some teachers in this district. I've gone rounds with some administrators in this district. Just stuff that I just fundamentally don't agree with sometimes. And then changes in the administration, changes in whatever. So something happened, not even with my younger daughter, something happened with my older daughter when she was graduating with the school district that I was like, to hell with you people. And one of my younger daughters needed some extra help with school, and just the pacing of school and everything was, as she got older and into middle school and stuff, was starting to struggle. So I had made the decision because God told me I needed to pull them out and homeschool them. And so, there definitely was probably some underlying, this is the right choice because it's going to make me the good kid or whatever, So,
well, and Tom would even say it, when he was on his rants about the school district and stuff. Well, even Melissa has decided that this school district.
Yeah.
And so it was almost like praising you, but then a huge jab at you at the same time.
Well, and I feel like a lot of it too was, I think the majority, I would say that I had myself convinced it was God, and that I definitely knew how to say the God things. Does that?
Oh, yeah.
Did I believe it at the time? Yes. Now looking back, I'm like, well, I'm sure whatever reasons I had, when I verbalized them, I wrapped them up in a pretty Jesus bow.
Yeah.
And so but honestly, there was an isolation factor out of that too, because to not get caught. And I wasn't, I was doing anything wrong, but to keep the cops from coming to my house, to keep from being exposed, which is just so crazy, because you think as a victim who's being in a situation where you're desperately on one hand crying for help, you need help and somebody needs to come and rescue you, but on the other hand, you don't want to be exposed because you have all this guilt and shame from being a victim. It's a mind. It's a mess. And none of it makes sense. What you sit here and you try to verbalize it. And I'm like, I know it doesn't make sense. I know. I was protecting the people and the person that I needed to be rescued from and help from. But that's how messed up in your head you get. And so I do think a lot of it was just to isolate. It was, if I was with my children all the time, and I was schooling them, and then they couldn't tell anybody anything, and I could keep the peace, I had it under control. And then this was going to play into, where I needed to be in the whole traditional Christian wife, and homeschooling. Like the words, I didn't even know, like trad wife. I didn't know that word at that time. This whole movement for people to go back to like the 50s. I didn't know. I made jokes about it, but I didn't know it was a thing.
Yeah.
Like I really just thought like it was my husband who wanted to live this like 1950s, lifestyle. Like I don't even know if he knows where he got it from, but for some reason that's what was needing to happen. So yeah. And then there was also this fundamental movement that I didn't even know was a thing until I started hanging out with homeschool families. And I was like, oh, that's not why we're here. We're not homeschool people like you are homeschool people. I am educationally homeschooling my children. But
Yeah.
whatever. It ended up being a good thing. So,
but you're at this time, are you like serving in a lot of ministries, or you're mostly working and homeschooling?
I am homeschooling in the morning and then I go to work in the evening.
Brandi and I have been on timeout for we're going on probably 4 or 5 months. We're on timeout. We're not allowed to be friends. Brandi comes to me and tells me she is pregnant during this time. She feels like she needs to tell Charlotte because this is like they're planning for women's retreat, for the Project Change retreat, and she's super sick and things like that. And I mean, at this point in time, Brandi is no spring chicken. Like
This is when I found out that she was older than I am, and I had known this woman now for a few years.
Yeah.
And this is when I worked with her with the play.
Yeah.
And this is when I found out that she was older than me. And I was like, you what?
Yeah. So, I mean, she was in her...
Possible? You're older than I am.
She was in her 40s. And I want to remind people back to Brandi's like origin story episodes where she talked about her struggle to not only get pregnant, but to stay pregnant. She had suffered multiple miscarriages over the years. So we knew this pregnancy probably wasn't going to stick. Not only given her age, but just given her medical history. I'm not going to go super into it just because like I'm not going to tell her story for her, but this is what causes Brandi and I to be able to be friends again. So Brandi tells Charlotte and says, hey, I don't want you to say anything to anyone. Like I don't want to tell people until like we're way farther into the pregnancy. Behind closed doors, her and I had conversations, and she didn't even want to tell the boys because they're old enough now, they understand, and she didn't want to devastate them. And this wasn't her first go around with all of these things. And Charlotte says, you need to tell Tom. So Brandi tells Tom, and again is like, hey, I would prefer no one know, whatever. Thursday night, Tom goes to practice worship before Thursday night service and tells the entire worship team that they all need to pray for Brandi because she is pregnant and she is old. And like, I mean, essentially
that's pretty much how that went down too. That's what I found out.
Yeah. Brandi is pregnant and Brandi is old. So we need to pray for her. He did not tell anyone this is a secret. He made it seem like this is a dire situation, right? Brandi is working with Charlotte in children's ministry. So because Charlotte took over children's ministry, Brandi doesn't have to sit in service and listen to the pulpit shaming. So that has kind of stopped that a little bit of I'm in the sound booth now and Brandi's in children's with Charlotte. So that whole where we have to sit there and listen to him tell us how women suck on Thursday nights, that kind of stopped that. So Brandi is in children's ministry, and as they are worshiping, Corey from Corey and Topanga is in charge of in between certain songs. One of the worship leaders always talks just a little bit about something random, whatever's on their heart, and then they pray, and then they go into another song. Corey, not knowing, full on did not know. Do not blame this man, because he did not know. Told, which, I mean, granted, it was a Thursday night, so there was a whole whopping like 30 people there. But
wow, I was going to say like 6.
yeah.
Wow, you are being generous.
But told,
I don't remember ever singing to 30 people on a Thursday.
I was being very generous. Probably a good dozen.
Yeah, I would say.
Corey outs Brandi and says, "Let us all pray for Brandi." And we all collectively pray for Brandi. As everyone is praying for Brandi, I am in the sound booth texting her saying,
Houston, we have a problem.
Secret is out. So she has people coming up to her. Oh my gosh, you're pregnant. Da, da, da. So by Sunday, the church gossip mill has ran full tilt all weekend long. So by Sunday, people are coming up to her, congratulating Jason, coming up to the boys and being like, aren't you so excited your mom's going to have a baby? And all of this. Tom pulls me into his office on Monday morning and tells me, your friend is going to need help. Your friend is pregnant. And I was like, my friend? Like,
oh, yeah, my friend.
Are we friends now? I don't like
now.
And he's like, your friend needs your help. So pretty much timeout is over. She's going to need your help because she's not going to be able to do this.
Yeah.
So that is what allowed Brandi and I to be friends again.
Yeah, and the beans were spilled by the biggest gossip in the church.
Exactly. And the sad thing is that
if your pastor gossips, is he really even a pastor?
The sad thing is that just a few weeks later, Brandi did, suffer a miscarriage, which we saw coming, and but then we had to go through the ladies of the church wanted to make casseroles and bring them over to her and, oh my gosh, and cry with her and all of this stuff. And I'm like, y'all need to just leave her alone. Like, she's not being kept because they're like, she's not processing this. She's not grieving. And I'm like, this is like her 10th one. Yeah. Like, I mean, at some point
this was gonna happen.
You have to shut down your emotions. You can't live in that every single time. Like, that's the reality she lived in. And so I kind of had to run interference a little bit of like, no, we're not doing a meal train. No, we're not going to her house to pray for her. Yeah. No, we don't need you to make a memorial quilt for this baby for her to have as a memento. Like, she doesn't need any of that. She does, like, you need to leave her alone is what you need to do. And so I kind of did that, but we're allowed to be friends.
Yeah, that's
big. And just as we're allowed to be friends, we get given a big task.
Burning Butterflies is a listener-supported podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by our amazing supporters on Patreon.
Follow the link in our show notes to learn how you can become a Patreon supporter too. Supporters get exclusive access to bonus content each month, including outtakes, cut content, and supporter-only episodes. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating on your listening platform.
Burning Butterflies is a production of Asha Media. Thank you for listening.